So on this channel, we've taken the deepest of dives in the world of the living dead. Of course, everybody's talked about the classics like Return of the Living Dead or Night of the Living Dead, maybe even Dawn or Day of the Dead. But we took a different route. We took a deep dive into the world of movies like Return of the Living Dead Necropolis. And if you remember the video we did on this, we learned that there was way more to the story than people thought. What sometimes appears to just be a cheap, bad horror movie done without any care is not always the case. The same could even be said for the movie's follow-up, Rave to the Grave. Now, both of these movies premiered on the same night back-to-back in 2005 on the channel Sci-Fi. We've also covered some of the Outer Realm Living Dead movies like Children of the Living Dead. Now, that was a wild story in and of itself. Legendary producer John Russo, involved with the original Night of the Living Dead, unfortunately has his name on that, and I'm sure until this very day wishes he could take it off. But something very interesting just happened. One of my good friends, Brandon, from the channel Tabata Vision, actually let me know about this DVD that was out there on the internet. When he showed me what he had in his hands, my jaw hit the floor. I considered myself to be some sort of a Return of the Living Dead aficionado. It's one of my passions in life. He lifted his hand up, and then I saw this. Return of the Living Dead Virus Bloodbath. Why have I not heard of this? Now, I feel like it's impossible for me to be on this planet to not know about a Return of the Living Dead film. Well, there was a little bit of a catch. Now, the movie that you see in my hand is a legally bought, legally made DVD release from Germany where the movie was given this title. Now, the licensing and the use of the word Return of the Living Dead is probably different from country to country, so overseas, whoever put this out had the approval to do so. But in America, the name of this movie is called Bombshell Bloodbath. So naturally, I had to take a deep dive into this and figure out what's going on. So the first thing I did was take the DVD out, put it in my American player, and see if it played. And it did play. So if you're interested as well because you're a Return of the Living Dead nut like me and you just gotta have something like this, go on eBay and grab it. It was not very expensive. But obviously my curiosity got the best of me. Bombshell Bloodbath? What an explosive title. What could it be about? I soon went on YouTube and watched the trailer for this movie, and it seemed like it was a pretty fun, yet very modestly made zombie movie. But what was interesting about the trailer is I got this sense of a little bit of Italian love in there. Maybe it was just me putting that in my head, but after seeing that trailer, I could not deny that I was super excited about watching this movie that, at least in Germany, has the moniker Return of the Living Dead. So let's talk a little bit about this movie, Bombshell Bloodbath. Bombshell Bloodbath starts out with a premise that seems fairly familiar for movies of this style. We see a guy out in the dirt roads running over a girl thinking he just killed somebody, when in reality, this girl has been dead for quite some time, and she is a zombie. Now, before too long in this movie, we see just what the crux is of this whole thing. And that as well has a very familiar stance that you've probably seen in other movies before. We see this doctor and two people that are working for him, this guy and this girl, in this nasty pseudo-medical looking room where on the table is a dead body with this disgusting looking makeup. Now, the first thing I noticed when I was watching this was how much I liked the makeup design of this guy. So let me paint this picture for you. The doctor has this guy on the table. The guy and the girl are talking back and forth, and you get the sense that they're trying to do some sort of reanimation, something like you would see in the movie Reanimator. And just like a lot of times in the past, they don't think that anything's happening. But in this case, it does. This zombie sits up on this table, looking grotesque as ever, and starts raising hell. He bites the doctor, the guy and the girl are trying to get away, and all hell breaks loose. After all, this is a zombie film. But here's what really caught my eye about Bombshell Bloodbath, and this actually led me to pause the movie and do something I've never done before. But more on that in a second. So in this movie, while I'm watching this, I'm noticing this color scheme that seems oddly familiar. Something that I couldn't exactly pinpoint at first, but then all of a sudden, like a 10-ton brick, it hit me over the head. In this scene, there's these golden hues, these brown hues that remind me a lot of a director that likes to have this visual style in his movies. The director I'm thinking of is Lucio Fulci. So as I'm watching this scene with these golden browns and dark muddy colors in this scene, especially the scene I was just describing, I was like, this guy has to be a big fan of Italian horror movies, especially Lucio Fulci movies like The Beyond or Zombie. So I did something I've never done in my 12 years plus of doing YouTube. I paused the movie and directly messaged the director himself. And he got back to me. And we're going to hear from him in just a second. The rest of Bombshell Bloodbath features elements from some of the other Living Dead sequels that you'll feel similar tones to. There's some really silly, quirky characters you would see from movies like Rave to the Grave, for instance. There were other setups you would see from the most classic of films like Night of the Living Dead. All in all, I'll say this about Bombshell Bloodbath. It's a modestly budgeted made zombie film, but there's something about it that really made me want to root for it, and I do. It's obviously a movie for the hardcore zombie fans and fans of Italian horror that are looking for something done by somebody who's a big fan of that. But the charm of this movie was something I really enjoyed. I really like the design of the zombies in this, especially this guy, as you can see on the cover, and I like the appeal and feel of it as well. It's something that I would definitely recommend for the hardcore zombie fans out there and for the fans of Italian horror. Now, for those that are into this genre like me and know the story of these films, hopefully from watching my previous videos, if you were a fan of a movie like Return of the Living Dead, Rave to the Grave, you probably get a big kick out of Bombshell Bloodbath. There's some similar stuff in the middle of the movie with strip clubs and things like that, and scenes that just kind of go over the top that reminded me big time of that. And in the pantheon of the low-tier Living Dead films, even though I say that lovingly, I would throw this movie somewhere in the midst of that. It's definitely a movie I think is better than Necropolis or Children of the Living Dead, but I feel like this would be a good counterpart to Rave to the Grave. For those kind of Living Dead fans out there and fans that enjoy seeing that kind of thing, I think you get a kick out of Bombshell Bloodbath. The makeup designs is really where this movie shines the most, and I think that's where a lot of attention and detail went into. And for that, I say good job. I understand I'm some sort of an auteur for these kinds of Living Dead films, so maybe I sensationalize them a little bit, and hey, if I'm guilty as charged, I'm guilty as charged. But to have something like this is totally fascinating. I mean, you have to admit, some of you watching this may have never even seen this before. I mean, I didn't either, and I feel like I'm pretty good about knowing these sorts of things. So as I got this DVD in my hand and I'm watching this movie and I get the sense of these Italian zombie flick vibes, I stop myself, look up this movie online, because obviously the back of this is in German, and I say to myself, who directed this movie? I want to talk to this guy. So I found the name of the director. He's a guy named Brett Mullen. He's actually got a number of credits under his belt. I go on Facebook, and sure enough, me and him were already friends. So I reach out to Brett. One of the questions I have is, did he know this existed? Did he know that in Germany his movie came out on DVD under the moniker Return of the Living Dead? Well, he hit me back up. So, let's see what he had to say about this whole thing.
I'm really glad you're digging the film. It was a lot of fun to make. It was actually my first film. And I went on to make a giallo and, actually a second giallo, and then was working on a movie called Killer Babes and the Frightening Fiasco. But I'm super big zombie fan. You know, my roots are Lucio Fulci and Umberto Lenzi. That's kind of the vibe. Even the music throughout is by a band called Umberto. So as far as the releases, you know, I'm a huge Return of the Living Dead fan. I've worked with Linnea Quigley, so that was cool. But I didn't have any say over the German release. First, it was released in Italy called Dead Inferno, and I've got, a few copies of that here at the house. And then I know it got that new title, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, Bombshell Bloodbath is the original United States release, but it was a very fun project to do. The artwork too that's on the box that you see, the Return of the Living Dead, that's made by Graham Humphreys. So he actually did some designs for Return of the Living Dead, and he did some designs for Lucio Fulci's Zombie. A lot of the artwork that you see on the the Arrow releases or anything else, he does a lot of box sets like that, and 88 films. But yeah, that's pretty cool. You'll see that the zombies, they bleed purple, which is pretty cool, from the injections. So that was a fun one. And there's some obvious, shout outs to zombie movies. There's a scene that, is kind of a nod at Day of the Dead. Huge George Romero fan. So, that was cool. And of course, the lighting and the music and all that, the pacing, I tried to give a good nod to Lucio Fulci. probably my favorite director.
Pretty cool of Brett to hit me back up, and thanks for all that information, man. I do have to admit that the cover art on this DVD is wicked cool. This is something I really like. Now, we talked a little bit about this movie afterwards, and Brett was talking about how he's hoping that this movie will get its American release on Blu-ray hopefully soon, and I even told him I'd love to interview him for the special features. Hopefully that becomes a reality. That's one of my goals, is to be on a special features release of a movie, especially a zombie film. So guys, roll those dice for me. Hopefully we can make that happen. So here's the real question. Is this a Return of the Living Dead film? Well, in the general sense, the answer is no, it's not. But it does feel like a movie in the similar vein of some of those later Living Dead sequels that we've talked about on this channel, that even though it's not legitimately one, I feel like it would be welcomed into the family, so to speak. When you're watching this one, you absolutely get the sense that this was made by somebody that absolutely loves what he does. Now, I think guys like Ken Wiederhorn can be exceptions to the rule, because obviously he was not into making those kinds of films, and I think he did an amazing job on Return of the Living Dead 2, but there's a ton of zombie films out there that were probably done just because somebody needed a job. So Bombshell Bloodbath is an example of something done by a director who was truly loving what he was doing. So on paper, this is not a Return of the Living Dead film, but I think I can safely put this next to Rave to the Grave and Necropolis on the shelf. If this had been some sort of a bootleg release or something, I might be a little bit hesitant. But it's pretty cool that in Germany, they used the Return of the Living Dead name for something. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this special chapter in the Living Dead series we've done on this channel. We've covered a lot of fun titles, a lot of insane titles like Children of the Living Dead, and it's always fun when we can find a little bit of Return of the Living Dead stuff out there in the wild that we may not have heard or seen before. So thank you guys for watching this. Check out the movie Bombshell Bloodbath. And thanks, Brett, for getting back to me so quick, man. I truly appreciate it. See you guys next time. Huge, giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind-the-scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.